moving a $13 billion supercarrier back to sea isn't sailing away from the dock. It's a multi-agency operation with reactor sign-offs, Coast Guard security zones, and tug choreography scripted down to the minute. The USS Gerald R. Ford weighs 100,000 tons. She's 1,092 feet long. Her draft sits nearly 40 feet deep. One mistake in the channel costs schedules, damages hulls, or blocks the harbor, so the Navy doesn't wing it. What you see on camera looks simple. Tugs nudge, lines come off, the carrier glides out. The water parts, she disappears over the horizon. Clean, smooth, routine. But that 2-minute clip hides weeks of preparation and hours of coordinated execution involving hundreds of people across a dozen organizations. Before the first line is cast, the shipyard has certified every system. The reactor department has brought 2 nuclear plants critical. The crew has manned sea and anchor detail, extra watch standers for tight water. A harbor pilot has stepped aboard to call every bell and rudder order, and the Coast Guard has locked down a 500-yard security zone around the moving ship. This isn't just departure, it's a certified process with formal stages. Yard release after maintenance comes first. That means dock trials, pier tests, and material certifications signed off by the shipyard, SUPSHIP, NAVSEA, and the ship's force. Every valve, every pump, every electrical bus, every backup system, all checked, all logged, all green. Only then does the Navy schedule sea trials. And only after trials validate propulsion, steering, electrical load, combat systems, and flight deck power does the ship return to training, carrier qualifications, and air wing integration. The Ford's size and cost create constraints no other ship faces. Her beam stretches 256 feet across the flight deck. That's nearly 3/4 of a football field. Her windage, the surface area exposed to wind, catches gusts like a sail. In narrow channels with crosswinds, the ship can set sideways faster than her screws can counter. Her deep draft of 37 to 39 feet, depending on loadout, limits where she can go and how fast she can move. Channels into Norfolk and Hampton roads are dredged to around 50 feet. That leaves roughly 11 to 13 feet of under-keel clearance in a best case. But squat, the hydrodynamic effect that increases draft at higher speeds, eats into that margin. So pilots pick tide windows carefully. They limit speed to single digits in restricted water. They calculate bank effect, the suction force that pulls a hull toward the channel edge when passing close. And they plan every turn, every speed change, every tug placement before the ship moves an inch. The nuclear reactors add another layer. The Ford runs on 2 reactors driving 4 shafts through an integrated electrical plant. That plant also powers the electromagnetic aircraft launch system and advanced arresting gear. EMALS and AAG are new technology. They need post-maintenance validation, but those certifications don't happen at the pier. They happen at sea, in phases. After engineering trials prove the propulsion plant is reliable, if the reactors stumble during the channel transit, there's no anchorage close enough to coast into safely. The ship has to answer bells when the pilot calls them. Period. The stakes ripple across the fleet. The Ford is the centerpiece of a carrier strike group. Destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and replenishment ships all sync their schedules to hers. If the Ford misses her sea trial window because of weather, a failed system, or a harbor incident, the entire strike group timeline slips. Training cycles delay, deployment dates shift, maintenance windows for other ships compress, the air wing waits, and the combatant commander loses a power projection option in theater. So every evolution, from reactor light-off to final trial card, is planned, rehearsed, and executed without drama. Yard officials, pilots, tug captains, Coast Guard coordinators, and the ship's commanding officer all work from the same script. The goal is no drama execution, no hull scrapes, no tug incidents, no security breaches, no schedule slips. The reality is this. Moving a supercarrier isn't about raw horsepower. It's about planning, pilots, and proving the systems work before the ship rejoins the fight. The move starts long before the tugs arrive. It starts in the shipyard with a stack of certifications that have to turn green. The Ford has just finished a planned incremental availability, a maintenance period where systems are torn down, upgraded, and rebuilt. Dock trials come first. The ship is still pierside. Engineers test propulsion, electrical, and steering systems in controlled sequences. They light off the reactors under strict procedures. They align steam lines. They load the electrical plant. They check redundancies. If a pump fails or a valve sticks, they fix it before the ship ever leaves the dock. Pier tests follow. These verify that systems work together, not just individually. Navigation radars, communication suites, damage control equipment, anchors and anchor windlasses, steering gear, shaft alignment. Every trial has a checklist. Every checklist has a sign-off. The shipyard signs. SUPSHIP, the supervisor of shipbuilding, signs. NAVSEA, Naval Sea Systems Command, signs. And the ship's force signs. No green signatures, no sea trial schedule. It's that rigid. Then comes reactor light-off for the transit. The Ford runs on two A-1B reactors. Each reactor heats water into steam. That steam drives turbines. Those turbines turn 4 massive shafts. The same steam also feeds the ship's electrical generation, which powers everything from lights to emails. Bringing a reactor critical isn't a light switch. It's a multi-hour evolution with dozens of watchstanders following nuclear procedures step by step. Control rods withdraw in carefully timed intervals. Neutron flux climbs. Temperature rises. Steam pressure builds. The reactor department monitors every parameter. Any deviation outside limits means they stop and troubleshoot. Once both plants are critical and stable, the engineering officer of the watch reports to the captain. Reactors answer all bells. Now the ship can move under her own power, but she still needs the right people in the right places. That's where sea and anchor detail comes in. Sea and anchor detail is an all-hands evolution. It doubles or triples the normal watch bill. The navigation team mans the bridge with updated charts, tide tables, and traffic data. The conning officer takes position. The lee helmsman stands ready at the engine order telegraph. The helmsman grips the wheel. Lookouts spread across the signal bridge. Down in engineering, extra throttlemen stand by at each plant. Damage control teams stand ready with pumps and shoring in case a line parts or a fender jams. On deck, line handlers break out heavy mooring lines. Fenders, massive rubber bumpers that protect the hull, hang along the pier side. The crew rigs phone and distance lines to communicate with the tugs. And the anchor detail stands by on the forecastle. If something goes wrong before the ship clears the harbor, the anchors are the emergency brake. The boatswain's mates check the windlass. They make sure the chain is free to run. They confirm the anchor is ready to let go on command. Meanwhile, the harbor pilot boards. In Hampton Roads, Virginia Pilots Association handles carrier transits. The pilot climbs aboard via a pilot ladder or boat. He brings local knowledge, current set, wind forecast, channel depth, traffic patterns, and coordination with the Coast Guard. The pilot doesn't replace the captain. He advises, but his word on speed, course, and tug placement carries weight. The captain and pilot brief the plan together, then the pilot takes the con. The captain retains command. It's a partnership built on trust and 2 centuries of maritime tradition. The tugs make first contact while the carrier is still tied to the pier. 4 to 6 high bollard-pull tractor tugs position themselves along the hull. These aren't old-school single-screw harbor tugs. They're azimuthing stern drive units with massive horsepower and 360-degree thrust vectoring. They can push sideways, pull at angles, and hold position against current and wind without changing heading. That matters when you're moving a ship with more windage than a city block. Each tug captain gets a briefing from the pilot. Who pushes where? Who pulls when? What signals to watch? The tugs pass heavy lines to the carrier's deck. Line handlers secure them to bollards rated for tens of tons of load. The tugs then take strain, just enough tension to confirm the line is good, and the bollard won't pull free. 1 tug forward on the port side, 1 forward starboard, 2 amidships, 2 aft. The exact setup depends on wind direction, current set, and pier layout, but the principle is the same. The tugs become the carrier's thrusters. The pilot calls the first move. Take in all lines except the afterspring. Line handlers on deck and the pier coordinate over sound-powered phones. Breast lines come off the bollards. Bow lines are singled up. The afterspring line, the one that runs from the stern toward the bow on the pier, stays under tension. It acts as a pivot point. The pilot orders the aft tugs to push the stern away from the pier. Slowly, a few feet per minute, the spring line keeps the bow pinned while the stern swings out. The hull starts to angle into the channel. Once the angle is set, the pilot calls, "Let go all lines." The last spring comes off. The carrier's floating free. No connection to land. Now it's all tugs. The forward tugs pull the bow clear of the pier. The amidships tugs counter any sideways drift from wind. The aft tugs keep the stern tracking. It's a choreographed push and pull, with 6 captains taking orders from one pilot and adjusting thrust in real time. The carrier doesn't use her screws yet. The propellers are huge, around 21 feet in diameter, and they're close to the bottom in shallow berths. Turning them risks sucking up debris, silt, or even a lost mooring line. Worse, the prop wash can blast the pier or other ships with enough force to cause damage, so the tugs do the heavy work. They walk the hull into the channel. They swing the bow toward open water. They counter every gust, every current shift, every bit of bank suction as the hull moves along the channel edge. The truth most people miss: the carrier isn't in control yet. The pilot is calling bells to engineering. Ahead 1/3, back 1/3, all stop. But those are positioning moves, not propulsion. The ship is drifting under tug power. She won't truly answer her own helm until she's aligned in the channel with enough water under the keel and sea room to maneuver. Until then, 6 tug captains are flying a 100,000-ton formation in slow motion. While the tugs are working, the Coast Guard is locking down the waterway. A 500-yard naval vessel protection zone moves with the carrier. That's 5 football fields in every direction. No unauthorized craft inside that bubble. No exceptions. Coast Guard patrol boats enforce the zone with lights, horns, and radio warnings. Small craft that drift too close get intercepted. Violators face federal penalties. The zone isn't paranoia, it's risk management. 1 jet ski, 1 fishing boat, 1 protester in a kayak wandering into the path of a moving carrier creates a close quarters emergency in a channel with 0 room to maneuver. Commercial traffic gets sequenced. The Coast Guard issues local notices to mariners days in advance. Container ships inbound to Norfolk are held at anchorage. Outbound vessels are released early or delayed. Ferries adjust schedules. Tugboat operators working other piers stand by. The goal is simple: clear the channel so the carrier has uncontested water from pier to seabuoy. In Hampton Roads, that means coordinating across multiple jurisdictions: Norfolk, Newport News, Portsmouth, and deconflicting military and civilian traffic through one of the busiest port complexes on the East Coast. The pilot is managing 3 variables at once: tide, wind, and speed. Tide sets the depth window. The main channels are dredged to roughly 50 feet. The ford draws 37 to 39 feet, depending on stores and fuel. That leaves about 11 to 13 feet of clearance at high tide. But at speed, even slow speed, the hull generates squat, a hydrodynamic effect that effectively increases draft by pulling the ship deeper into the water. At 10 knots, squat can add several feet, so the pilot keeps speed in the single digits. 4 knots, 6 knots. Enough to maintain steerage, but not enough to risk grounding on a shoal or sill. Wind complicates the equation. The carrier's flight deck is 256 feet wide. It catches wind like a billboard. A 15-knot crosswind can set the hull sideways faster than the rudder can counter at low speed. The pilot angles into the wind slightly. He uses the tugs to check drift, and he times the transit for favorable conditions, early morning calms or between weather fronts, to reduce lateral set. Bank effect is the hidden force. When the hull moves close to the channel edge, the water accelerates between the ship and the bank. That creates suction, pulling the bow or stern toward shore. It's strongest on the side nearest the bank and increases with speed. The pilot keeps the ship centered. He avoids tight turns. And if the bow starts to swing toward the edge, he orders a tug to push or the rudder to counter before the hull commits. Then comes the moment. Answer all bells. The pilot orders ahead 1/3. Engineering responds. The shafts turn. Water churns. The carrier moves under her own power for the first time since the yard. Rudder checks confirm steering. The tugs cast off their lines and peel away. The ford steadies on course, clears the capes, and pushes into blue water. Sea trials begin. Once the carrier clears the capes, the real test begins. Sea trials aren't a victory lap. They're a systematic proof that every system works as designed under load, under stress, and under operational conditions. The ship carries a stack of trial cards, formal checklists issued by the Navy and the shipyard. Each card targets a specific system or evolution: propulsion plant performance, steering checks, crashback drills, full power runs, electrical load tests, combat systems power-up, flight deck systems validation. The crew works through them one by one. Any deficiency gets logged. Any failure means troubleshooting, repair, and retest before the ship is cleared to move forward. The engineering trials come first. The reactors have been critical since the pier, but now they're pushed to operational limits. Ahead, standard. Ahead, full. Ahead, flank. The throttlemen open steam valves. The shafts spin faster. The ship accelerates. Speed builds to 30+ knots. The engineering officer of the watch monitors temperatures, pressures, and flow rates across both plants. If a pump vibrates, if a bearing heats, if steam pressure droops, the trial pauses and the engineers investigate. These aren't nice-to-have checks. They're go, no-go gates. The ship doesn't return to the fleet until the propulsion plant proves it can answer any bell the captain orders. Steering trials follow. The helm is put through program turns, hard right, hard left, steady course changes. While the ship is at various speeds, the rudders respond to orders from the bridge through hydraulic actuators. If there's slop in the system, if response time lags, if the ship oversteers or understeers, it shows up here. The data gets compared against baseline performance from previous trials. Any deviation triggers investigation. Crashback drills test emergency stopping power. The ship is running ahead at speed. The order comes all back full. The shafts reverse. The hull shudders. The deck plates vibrate. Water boils at the stern. The ship decelerates hard. It's violent. It's loud. And it proves the ship can stop in an emergency without tearing itself apart. The engineering spaces monitor shaft torque, bearing temperatures, and steam flows during the reversal. If anything spikes outside safe limits, the drill is terminated and the cause is traced. Electrical load tests validate the integrated power system. The Ford generates electricity for the entire ship. Hotel loads like lights and air conditioning, combat system loads like radars and computers, and mission loads like EMALS and the advanced arresting gear. Engineers bring systems online in stages and measure how the plant responds. They watch voltage, frequency, and load distribution across the electrical buses. If the load spikes and voltage sags, they troubleshoot the distribution network. If a generator trips offline, backups have to pick up the load seamlessly. The flight deck systems get powered up, but full EMALS and AAG certifications come later. Those require dedicated test events with aircraft and arresting gear instrumentation. For now, the goal is proving the electrical backbone can handle the demand. Combat systems trials power up radars, fire control networks, and defensive weapon systems. The ship doesn't fire live rounds yet, but the sensors and computers are exercised through scripted scenarios. Can the radars track simulated targets? Do the data links sync with other platforms? Does the Combat Information Center receive and process the feeds correctly? Each green check mark moves the ship closer to full operational capability. When the trial cards come back green, inspectors and the ship's force debrief. Lessons are documented. Minor deficiencies are scheduled for correction pierside. Major issues trigger another round of yard work and retrials. But if the ship passes, she's released to the next phase: training and qualifications. Carrier landing qualifications for pilots, integration with the air wing, live fire exercises, underway replenishment drills. The move from pier to blue water is complete. The $13 billion Supercarrier is back in the fight. If this breakdown showed you how the Navy actually operates, hit subscribe. We're pulling back the curtain on every evolution the fleet doesn't advertise. You won't find this level of detail anywhere else.